You're watching News at Prime. Let's get into this discussion now. There are growing concerns over the sharp rise in crashes involving scholar transport vehicles. Latest statistics showing that over 800 children between the ages of 5 and 14 lost their lives on the country's roads annually between the years 2018 and 2022. The Transport Department spokesperson is Collen Msibi, who is with us in studio tonight. Mr. Msibi, good evening to you and thank you for joining us. As we indicated earlier, October, observed in South Africa as Transport Month. It's perhaps fitting, therefore, to ask what it is that the department is doing to show that it places value on human life, particularly in averting road accidents.
Thanks so much for the opportunity, Colli. Well, indeed, of course, when we started the October Transport Month, I think we were across the river on the other broadcaster that I shall not name. So, of course, it's an opportunity for us to demonstrate the kind of work that we do.
Yeah.
We are a policy maker as a department, so it gives us an opportunity to then go and monitor and check what exactly is happening with the money that we are allocating or distributing to entities, but also the grants that we are giving to the provinces and municipalities. So it gives us that opportunity. But second, coming back to your question, the issue of road safety, it's been a concern for a while. The new administration has come and said we need to review the road safety strategy that we have so that it speaks to the concerns of the nation. And the Deputy Minister has been charged with that responsibility. He's leading the charge in terms of ensuring that there is that strategy in place. You've raised quite an important point in your preamble. The issue of scholar transport is a huge problem. But you must also understand, the scholar transport, there's a scholar transport that is subsidized by government. There's one which is just being privately organized. And we found that the trend seems to point to those that are just doing their own thing, that they sort of get involved in these crashes. But it's not an excuse for us. We need to ensure that there's something that is being done to look into the issue of the scholar transportation, especially given the fact that right now there's about 707,000 scholars who are being transported through this kind of system that we have in place.
Just out of interest, on the scholar transport that is subsidized by government, who is the custodian of scholar transport between yourselves, the Transport Department, and the Department of Basic Education? Because oftentimes when these incidents occur, there's difficulty in placing responsibility. Whose responsibility is it?
Look, we are a policy department when it comes to scholar transportation, but we have to work collaboratively with the Department of Basic Education. Yeah. So in other words, the issue of subsidy and so forth, it comes from the provinces that reports these, the reporting lines which would go to education, and part of it is the Department of Transport in the provinces. Yeah. But we have to determine the policy at the national level. As you are saying, there isn't any scholar transportation that, let's say, for instance, the subsidy that comes from us to say we are funding this particular area in terms of the scholar transportation. It happens at the provincial level, but both departments must work together at that level.
These statistics that we opened with, they're quite shocking. 827 children between the ages of 5 and 14 were killed on South Africa's roads between the years 2018 and 2022. Many of these children are either pedestrians, and pedestrians, they make up 66% of the victims, while passengers work out to 33%. Does that concern you, and what can be done to avert this?
It's a serious concern, Collen. The fact that just a short period in December, you lose close to about 1,000 people. It does show that there is an element of driver behavior that must be looked into as we review the strategy in terms of how do we change the behavior of the drivers. Secondly, we need to look at the roadworthiness, in particular of scholar transportation. I know that the Deputy Minister about a week ago wanted to go to KwaZulu-Natal to do an unannounced visit to look at the scholar transport. Yeah. Why? Because there is strong suspicions that those vehicles, some of them are not roadworthy. So it was spoiled just because somebody then leaked this information. So there is that issue. We need to look at the roadworthiness of vehicles because that is the major cause. I think it's the third cause of these accidents. We've got to look at the kind of certification and all, the driver worthiness, whether these people who are driving these vehicles, are they fit enough? Do they have the correct papers to be in charge of such a huge responsibility? Yeah. So the strategy that the minister has asked for must look at all those things. These are factors that are quite important. But also what is very crucial, I think at some point we would publish, which I think RTMC still does, what we call the hazardous routes, where we know that on this particular spot, you are likely to have an accident. But you find that...
Moloto Road, for example, is one case in point.
But you find that, as I said to you, driver behavior is a problem. Because some people, they don't really care. They don't obey the speed limits that are put there. So these are all the matters. Government can only do so much, Collen, but we cannot get into the vehicle and be the one driving those vehicles. Hence, we are saying it is important that we look at the issue of driver behavior. We do education and awareness programs. Yeah. You can do all sorts of things and even invest money into doing so. But if the driver behavior is the same, might as well just go home.
Wouldn't the department be doing the public a huge favor by centralizing scholar transport? Not only accrediting them, but making sure that we know who provides transport for children all across South Africa so that you avoid even the private scholar transport that gets organized, because I'm sure that as well, it's possible that parents are doing that out of sheer frustration with the government-run service. Would it not be prudent for the department to start considering centralizing scholar transport?
Look, the issue is that the regulation of such service, it is done through what they used to call the operating licensing boards. So in other words, if you want to gain money by transporting learners, you've got to have a permit to do so, or a license to do so. So that's what they do. Yeah. But to say that national must take that responsibility, we've got a regulator at the national department, but that responsibility is concurrent. In other words, it also happens at the provincial level, where the actual licensing must happen. Yeah. So you've got those regulators, which are the provinces. If you want to operate a scholar transport, you've got to go to the regulator to be able to get that license. Otherwise, you're not supposed to operate. But you cannot also prevent people to say, I'm going to have my own taxi that I'm going to use to transport the learners, and then I'm going to speak to the parents so that they can pay me directly. So that's part of the game. It's like the taxi industry. You've got those that are having operating licenses, and you've got those that are still waiting for their operating licenses, and those that are illegally operating. So you'd always have that particular dynamic. But the issue of regulating and in terms of operating licenses, it happens at the provincial level. Yeah. Yeah.
An entity of your department, the Department of Transport, it's the Road Accident Fund. They have introduced what they call a theory-based defensive driver workshops for scholar transport drivers to help change driver behavior. Are you aware of this program and your thoughts on it, particularly around driver behavior?
I'll be honest, I don't have the specific details on that, but I think it is something that could possibly help. I haven't engaged our counterparts when it comes to that particular area.
Yeah.
But I suppose the issue of road safety, it cuts across all our road entities, even Sanral. They've got their own initiatives that they are looking into. For instance, on the Moloto corridor, where they're developing an infrastructure there. They're putting in place some sort of a safety campaign. The cross-border agency is also doing the same for the cross-border transport operators. So all our road agencies, they've got the responsibility to come up with campaigns and present it to the boards. So, and then to be able to implement that. As much as it is not their core mandate, RAF, it is not their core mandate. Yeah. Theirs is to disperse the fund and to assist those who've been involved in an accident, but they have a responsibility to ensure that there is safety campaigns that they put in place. So I think that it is one of them, but I cannot speak eloquently on it. I think the RAF can be able to do so.
All right. Final question to you, and something slightly off-ramp. Construction mafia, how big a concern is it? I listened to you earlier talking on another platform about the construction mafia. How big an issue is it for the Transport Department in the construction projects you are involved in?
It's seriously a huge concern, you know, because the work that you do is to create jobs through infrastructure development, grow the economy and all sorts of things. But then when we go into areas where you feel as though that you are not being part of it, then you turn around and say, this is not going to happen if Xoli Mngambi is not part of this program. Then that becomes a problem, and to an extent that some of it becomes criminal. Yeah. There are certain cases, for instance, in Cattle Ridge, where people have been arrested on the N3 just recently because they are doing that. So there are cases in courts that are dealing with that matter. But in KZN, we've been able to manage that through creating certain structures where we can engage with the Black Business Forum, for instance. Yeah. So those structures, they really do help us so that we do involve the small businesses into what we do. For instance, on the N3 and the N2, more than 10 billion rand is going to be spent on the small businesses, and people are going to, and some committee members who are working in these projects will get wages over 7 billion rand over a period of 8 years. So it's quite a huge project, but the reality is that on Valazonke, for instance, when we go into your area, if you live in Soweto, and then you see Sanral coming to fix your potholes, and then you say, I want to be part of it, otherwise you can get out, becomes a problem, and then it becomes a criminal issue, and we cannot tolerate that.
Collen Msibi, thank you very much for your time, spokesperson for the National Department of Transport.